Hi, so we are here tonight to talk about how to connect into your ancestral field. And we might refer to it as the family tree, but how to connect into it so that actually you can bring forward healing for yourself and for your family tree. So we're going to wait a few moments until people are on here and there's a little group because as ever, I would love to hear any of your questions. Hi, Michaela. Hi, Cheryl. I see you coming on. That's fabulous. Because this is a really juicy topic, eh? This is a topic that we could spend, well, several topics and several months on working with this topic because it's such a massive way that when we work with the healing field of our ancestors, then we have the potential to really resolve so many things that possibly we don't even identify or haven't yet identified are part of an ancestral pattern. Hi, Audrey and Sylvie. Hi, Sylvie. I see that you are in Ireland, which is great. So am I. We're getting together. There's a group of 22 of us that are getting together down in the very south of Ireland as of Saturday to work with honouring the ancestors and bringing healing there. So yes, it's a very pertinent topic, not just because we're about to do that work, but also because this is the time of year that really accessing that ancestral energy is easier now than at any other time of year. So it's a very powerful way for us to be working together. And that's why I've chosen this evening to do this topic. Let's have a look. Hi, Rob, Indra, Claire, amazing, Denise, Anna and Rachel, fabulous. Hi, Anan and Joy, Vicky, cool. So we've got lots of people who are going to be working in Ireland next week as well. So that's going to be very exciting. And also one thing that's really important is that even when we engage in a discussion like this on Facebook, then actually we're setting a group field around a certain topic. And by field, I mean a cohesive energy that is interdependent and in some way separate to other fields of energy. So when we work on something like a Facebook Live, even if we're just sharing thoughts and questions and maybe doing an exercise together, then that's setting an energy into our individual energy field that is enhanced and really aided by the fact that we're not just a single individual doing it at that moment. So awesome that so many of us are here right now. Lovely. And Zelda, hi Zelda. Okay, well, let's start because yeah, these half hours go by very quickly, don't they? And ask questions as ever, ask questions. It's always a really powerful way for me to understand how you're thinking and how to actually bring forward the insights or the answers to your questions. So bring them on. So the ancestral field, what do I even mean by that? What do I mean if I'm talking about honoring the ancestors to really be able to bring healing into yourself? Well, in many ways, almost every pattern that we hold and carry in our energy systems are linked to our ancestral energy field. The best way I can kind of help you think about that is we're kind of familiar with the concept of the family tree, yeah? And whenever I'm working with that concept, then I can really visualize that big, beautiful tree with all of its roots in the ground and its big trunk and the boughs and all of those thousands and thousands and thousands of leaves. Well, for me, I might think about my mother and my father and think about all of their mothers and fathers right back, yeah? And think of that as being represented by that one tree. And every leaf might represent a different ancestor. And together, all of those leaves make up the flavor, the shape, the colors of that particular tree. Okay, we're good so far. But now I'm married my wonderful husband, which means that his family tree is just as important and vital in my field, because one of the amazing things that happens when we begin to work with the ancestral field is that we're able to bring healing forward to our descendants. For me, that's one of the big powers of working with our ancestors. Not only can we bring healing back into those lines, but that moves forward through us into our descendants. So if I'm working now to create that balance and that healing in my family tree, it can't just be mine individually, can it? It needs to be also my husband's family tree. So now we begin to think of all of our blood ancestors who have married into other families, and we realize that there's no such thing as a family tree singular. We need to think much more of a forest of trees. And underneath each tree, we can see those trees in the forest with their roots intertwined. Maybe even some of the boughs are intertwined as well. But we're having hundreds of thousands and more people in that family lineage. Well, just that's always mind-blowing to me. But let's take a moment and think about that. Think about the fact that for almost every single one of us on this Facebook Live right now, that actually at some point, your forest is my forest. At some point, those trees of all of us are going to be connecting. That somewhere, even if we have to go deep back into human history, those roots intertwine. Kind of cool when we're working with the concept of a great web of connection, and that every single one of us has their essential and vital part in that web of connection. It's difficult to think about me as an individual, as an isolated individual, when I consider that, blimey, at some point, we're all related. That's a very grounding concept. If we're looking for a sense of belonging, a sense of family, of tribe, of connectiveness, then actually we only have to look at our ancestors to really understand our place and our part of that whole right now. So we've built up the concept of that forest. So you imagine if you went to the edge of a vast forest, there's going to be trees in there that are vibrant, healthy, living their joyful, big life in the sun. And there's going to be other trees that might be struggling in some way or might be needing support from the forest community. It's exactly the same in the ancestral field. There will be some energies within that ancestral field that really are the guardians, the deep ancestors, the compassionate ancestors. They're the ones who are holding the balance of that big energetic field. There will be others that are leaning on that balance, that are leaning into it, that are calling for more support, for more help. And they're the part within that beautiful forest that when we do ancestral healing work, it's those energies that we actually are looking to support. We're looking to bring some form of balancing into the places in that beautiful forest or web of energies that actually isn't as vibrant as it needs to be. So we've got the concept of the forest. We understand that there are places of real strength in there and that there are places of more vulnerability. Yeah. Well, now, if we take it that every single part of that big ancestral field feeds into our energy systems, that we are a product of it. If even one of your ancestors didn't exist, then you wouldn't be here right now. And that fact always blows my mind. Every single one of your ancestors needed to take their part, take their place, no matter how long they lived, no matter if they were good as gold or absolutely mischievous in every way. Mischievous being a kind word to use, yeah? Doesn't matter what kind of character they were, doesn't matter if they did dreadful deeds or saint-like deeds. Everyone needed to exist for you to be alive. Sometimes it's worth just stopping in with even that concept. Because what it does is it begins to grow a sense of appreciation, maybe even gratitude to every single one of them. Now, I want to say first up that for some of you, you might not like any of the ancestors that you have known. And we come across it fairly frequently. Maybe you really even left your family because you did not agree with them, like them, couldn't find any resonance with them. That's okay, that's your choice right now. They're still your ancestors, so you will still be being affected by that family field. Some of you might be adopted and not know your birth family, or maybe you do as well. If you're adopted, then you're working with two family fields. You fully have your place within the family field of your adopted family, but you also have your place within the ancestral and family field of your birth family. So wow, your forest gets even bigger. All right, let's see if there's any questions. All right, Claire, you're asking, are there any ways to work to heal fear and inability to trust that runs through your ancestral line? Yeah, it's a great question, Claire. And essentially, as we continue to talk through this Facebook Live here, then any theme can be healed. In fact, perhaps you are experiencing that theme because you're the one to heal it. And this is what's really, really important. You'll be able to look around your family and you might identify, in this case, you're working with fear and inability to trust. Somebody else might be working with addiction. Somebody else might be working with anger. Somebody else might be working with betrayal or loss or. Any theme that you have noticed means that you have the ability to bring healing to that theme. There will be people within your family who have not even noticed it. Yeah, they're unaware of that pattern. But if you've noticed it, it means that you have the consciousness to heal it. One of the things that we see within that ancestral field is that there are great gifts and strengths. So anyone, what I often see within a family is that there will be someone, and my reckoning is that most of you on this call will be this person. There will be someone who is the soul bearer for that family tree. And essentially that means that you've been gifted the strengths and the abilities to really identify that pattern and, if you choose, bring healing to it. Now, often that soul bearer of the family tree is a little bit different than the rest of your family members. And that doesn't mean you can't have your place fully and you can't be totally respected and loved as a family member. For some of you, you really will be the black sheep of your family. You'll be the ones that the others don't quite get, that you're a little bit different from them, or maybe even that you're so different that the relationships are strained. Often, that's because you are carrying a lot of the kind of mirror patterns within your family. And I can see from all of the love hearts that are going up on the screen that this has definitely spoken to some of you. And many of us, when we are that soul bearer for the family, we find our way into the healing professions because we're aware at so many levels that there are energies moving within us, energies moving within every single person that can't quite be explained in the science textbooks. So often the soul bearers for family find themselves working in the healing professions. And I know that almost everybody here is attracted to the healing professions. Okay. Celia, I see that you're asking more about sacred sites for ancestors. Yeah, that's an awesome term. So, thinking about here today in Ireland. So I'm in County Clare right now. And this morning I took a beautiful walk up through some waterfalls to an old church. Actually, it wasn't even that old. It was 1700, so relatively. For some of you, that will seem very old, and for some of you, it won't be very old. But this was a ruin of a church that was sitting at the very, very top of the village. And there were amazing graveyards there, gravestones there. And I sat in that cemetery for a long while this morning, just dropping down at the place where the very bones of ancestors are. And I'm not saying that these are my ancestral bones, but at a certain point, all ancestors are my ancestors. So I'm not saying that this was my forest that I could directly heal, but I can still connect into the ancestors there. Any graveyard is an ancestral. I'm not going to say a portal because that word is too strong, but it helps us when we're sitting on the soil that's been nurtured by the bones of ancestors, the bones of the people that walked before we did, then obviously we're sitting in a very specific energy that can help us align with some of those wisdoms, some of those understandings, even if it's only because it really deeply grounds us into our mortal bodies. When we are deeply aware of the short amount of time that we have here as living souls on earth, then we're able to kind of transcend some of the very personal stories that can limit our full engagement with life. So in that respect, a graveyard becomes a sacred site. Another deeply, deeply powerful sacred site is the place where you know your ancestors came from. So if you have any of the stories of your family, let's say, for example, my father's family, for generation upon generation upon generation, came from Henley in Arden, which is near Stratford upon Avon, Shakespeare country. So to go there is very powerful for my energy field, to be able to go to the graveyards where my ancestors are buried, to walk past the pub that my ancestors sat in, or to walk across fields, to even dream, to think, to journey, to feel into the fact that this is the land of my blood. Very, very powerful for personal transformation, personal healing. I think, Celia, you're also asking about sacred sites as far as perhaps places like stone circles. Let's take a really big stone circle as an example and think of Stonehenge here. But anywhere where our ancestors gathered in some form of ceremonial or ritual activity, which is going to be true of any of the sacred sites, even hill forts or some of the Neolithic sites that we have, then we can really understand that this is a place where our ancestors gathered. And that in itself gives us that sort of, I can't really talk much about the energy of it. It's like, let me think for a minute of my words. Well, there's many words for it actually. The Irish would call it the second sight. Yeah, it's that understanding, that ability that as you walk along certain sacred sites, then actually you're walking and you're almost like you've got one foot in the old world and one foot in the new world. So you're able to see the layers, the subtleties, and if you don't perceive energy visually, then you're able to sense it or perceive it in your body system. I'm sure for many of you who have ever gone to an old castle, a stone circle, have walked for a while on a specific ley line, you begin to get that sense of something bigger than yourself walking with you. And I don't mean a specific entity or a very big person. I'm talking about the fact that you're actually beginning to move within a field of wisdom that is bigger than the one you can access usually in daily life. Let me know if that's true for you. Okay. Vicky, you're saying, I've been feeling emotions lately that may not be mine. How best to clear energy that is ancestral? So really love that question, Vicky. And one of the first ways to clear that energy, if you feel it's ancestral. So let me take the first part of that. Feeling emotions that may not be yours. If it's that you think actually it's the woman in the checkout line that you've been standing next to and that you've picked up her emotions, then my answer would be very different than if you're thinking that it's ancestral energy. In the first instance, get your aura really strong and do some nice clearing exercises to make sure that actually other people's energies can't come into you. If you're saying, and I think this is what you're saying, that actually you're feeling like the emotions that you're experiencing are ancestral emotions, the very, very first thing to do is to claim them as your own, because your ancestors are your own. Your cells, your genetics are created by the ancestor whose energy fields, whose emotional threads you're now picking up on. So, actually, one of the best ways to release and bring healing to those emotions within the ancestral field is to honor them as your own and work with them as if you're working with them in your own system. So, let's put that in a really concrete way. Let's say perhaps I've woken up one morning and I feel that there's a grief that's sitting in me. And after doing a bit of meditation, going for a walk, talking to myself, journaling, however I'm going to access that emotion, I really come to the decision that no, this isn't a current grief I'm experiencing. This is something that's older, that's bigger somehow in my system. And I identify that that might be ancestral grief. Often from that place, you get that kind of sense of, yeah, that's what it is. You get a sense that your hit is correct in that respect. For some of you, it might be a physical kind of relaxing when you come across a truth in your tracking process. So by the tracking process, I mean, I'm thinking through, what is this grief about? Is this about the conversation? Is this about anything I've lost in my life? No. Is this ancestral? Yeah, I think it is. So that's what I mean by the tracking process, and that sense of kind of connection or relief that actually you've identified where that energy system is coming from. So now, let's say I can now identify, all right, there's a grief in my system. I don't think it's anything current in my daily life or in my life. So I've identified it's ancestral. What am I going to do about it? Well, the very first thing I'm going to do is go and light a candle for my ancestors. And I'm going to say, thank you. Thank you for bringing forward this emotion for me to bring healing to. I get this opportunity to do this. Immediately, I'm going to hold the image of my descendants. So in this case, my children, but also my brothers and sisters' children, their children. I'm a great aunt very many times over now. So I have a sense of that line going forward. That may or may not be true for you if you don't have any descendants, and recognize at some point within the branches of your family tree, there would be many relations of yours who do have living descendants. And so when you work to bring any healing in your family field, you're working for those descendants as well. So I've now identified there's a theme. I've tracked it to ancestral. I've lit a candle and I'm giving gratitude. Often at that point, the emotion flows through you. You've brought the healing to it and the work is done at that time. It really can be as simple as that. And that's one of the reasons I love working with the ancestral field. It's such a massive energy, and yet we house it so naturally. Every single part of us is wired into the ancestral field, every part. There's not even a breath that you can take without it being part of this deep ancestral energy. Your ancestors had lungs, so do you. We're breathing the same air, we're drinking the same water, we're made of the same water. So actually, at no part can I say, that's it, thanks, today I don't want to take on any ancestral stuff, don't want to be part of that field today. There's never a choice like that. We're always plugged into the ancestral field, which means at any point we can take our consciousness to it and bring healing to it. Okay. Hi, Naomi and Tim. Lovely. Okay. Let's have a look. Ingrid, I see your question about night terrors that are triggered by ancestral war trauma. So in that situation, so you've really done great. You've already identified what you're working with. It may be, of course, the same with anything. If the intensity of the ancestral field is too big for you to manage or process on your own, then that's a time for bringing in people who are skilled with ancestral healing. For me, I would work shamanically and I would go to a shamanic practitioner if something felt kind of too big for me to actually be tracking and identifying on my own. But as well as that, I would still be doing things like taking a pilgrimage to the place of the land of any of my ancestors. And that pilgrimage, it's a deeply sacred event, but it's also really fun. And we're weaving the ancestral and the modern together. So being able to honor where our ancestors are from, listen to any of the stories that we can find from the older members of our family. There's generally one family member that will be more of the story holder, the story keeper. So finding them so that those stories can live on, that's one of the very, very biggest ways of actually bolstering, activating, energizing, bringing healing to that family field. All right. Hi, so many of you here. Bev, I see you say you've just got news. You have a new granddaughter born moments ago. Amazing, amazing. Okay, Rob, you're asking the super tricksy question. How do past life incarnations and ancestral genetic lineage link up? So they link up in you, okay? You can hold spiritual or actually I'm going to say we're going to look at three of these. You can hold spiritual lineage. So perhaps you're someone for whom the first time you ever came across a Buddhist saying or prayer or text, your whole being resonated with it, that you knew this as a truth in yourself. That might indicate that you have a Buddhist spiritual lineage and that some of those teachings are deeply, deeply resonant with you. Okay. The other option is that it might be something that's from your past life traditions. So in that term, you might be able to say, I think I have past life experiences within that Buddhist tradition, and that's why it resonates so deeply. It could also be that that Buddhist attraction is coming from your genes, from your ancestral lineage. And all of those three are operating at any one time. So it can get really complex. Thank you for asking the question. So it can get really complex. And there will be different modalities of healing that will work more with one way than with another. So you might go to a past life therapist who really only works with past lives. And it's not so much that you're working with the ancestral field directly or with your spiritual lineage directly, but it's really through that sort of funnel or access point of past lives. My personal opinion is that all three of them interweave so greatly that then it just comes down to the wording that you use. And maybe I'm saying something like, oh, we're working with a past life here, and actually it's ancestral, but it doesn't matter. We're tapping into the same energy fields, no matter which of those three we're labeling it or we're categorizing it as. Okay, let's see how we're doing. Oh, we're nearly out of time. Let's see. Naomi, you're asking an awesome question. Can you have two soul bearers alive in a family? E.g., can I and one of my children be a soul bearer? Absolutely. In fact, you can have many. Generally, there'll be that family soul, let's call it that family soul or that family field will be being held by multiple people. So it may be that someone is the story keeper. Someone else is really bringing forward healing into a specific line of imbalance. So maybe addiction is in your family line, and one of your family members has experienced addiction, has moved through into the healing of that addiction, and now is actively working with healing that addiction in other people within the community or the family. So it doesn't have to be that that sort of family field is being held by one person. Sometimes that's more true in families, but the more active people are in actually bringing healing into the family tree, then the less of the sort of burden of that has to fall on one specific person. Okay. Joy, you're asking, is this linked with constellation therapy? It can be. It can be. Constellation therapy is really, really interesting because it taps into the ancestral field. And sometimes it does so without the containment of, um, of how to say this? When we work ancestrally, then that ancestral field is very alive, yeah? Which means it takes someone with the skill to meet that field, to manage it, and to continue to monitor and work with that field long after a constellation has finished. And so, really working with understanding the realm of the dead, the realm of the ancestors. And I've seen constellation therapists be incredibly skilled at that, really, really wonderful. And I've seen some who really don't have an awareness of that. So, same with every single healing profession, isn't it? It really comes down to the skill of the individual to work with whatever it is that's being presented. So, yes, constellation therapy can very, very much impact the ancestral field. Wonderful. How have we got? I think let's take one more question. All right. One Min, you say, I normally thank my mother who passed away and ancestors daily, and I visualize the whole family, including my mother, having a good time together. Is it possible I might invite in energies that are not beneficial for healing or for my family in general by doing this? No, absolutely not. And that's a really beautiful, beautiful daily ritual. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, One Min, because that's a very simple way to connect into the ancestral field. Simply, you can start with thanking, saying hi to someone that you know who has moved into your ancestral realm, and then thinking of others, thinking of all the ones that you don't know. And this process can take 20 seconds, 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be a 40-minute process every day. I have a little house that was gifted to me that we can put a candle inside it. And most days I go downstairs, I light that candle, and I just take a few breaths with my ancestors. And I thank them for all of the gifts that they bring, all of the challenges that they bring, because they will also give me the strength that's needed to move through those challenges. And with that, I walk away and I get on with the rest of my day. But it's a beautiful way to ground almost into my bones. Our bones. I always think of the bones as being really linked to the bones of my ancestors. So grounding into your bones is an amazing way to really honor your own life, the life of your ancestors, and the life of your descendants. Okay, so I would invite you, if you wish to, next week, light a candle for us. Light a candle for the 22 of us that are working in Ireland to work with the human ancestors here, but also the ancestors, the land spirits, the ancestors that go way, way, way back through our mist, through our time, into the very energies of the land. So we're doing this work for even greater cosmic balancing. All right. So much love to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I really loved talking about the ancestors, feeling my own system light up at thinking of them and thinking of how at some point all of us are deeply, deeply connected and related. All right. Much love. See you soon. Bye-bye.